Shalom. I believe I know almost everyone here, if not everyone. But just a reminder, my name is Amit, and above all, I am proud to be Pete's friend. Hey. I am married to... you're welcome. Just don't start showing off. Okay? Do you guys remember the name of my wife? Amit. Amit the girl. In the 2017 tour, I had 2 kids. 2019 tour, I had 3. Guess what? Yeah, 4 kids. We were normal 4 kids ago, me and my wife. So, and I left her in Israel for more than 3 weeks now with 4 kids. Good luck finding the door open. Yeah. And I keep thinking that the first time I felt actually relaxed and comfortable was at Pete's place, or to be more specific, Tim's cigar shop in Bay City. Because jokes aside, it's been a bit rough the last 3 months and 3 weeks now. There is a war ongoing in Israel. Nobody saw it coming except those demons that planned all that, and they planned it for a long time apparently. It was October 7. I woke up early in the morning by my wife telling me that something is going on. It was shortly before 7 in the morning, a few minutes after Hamas started firing like crazy from Gaza. And we packed our stuff. I dropped my wife and my 4 kids at friend's house because there were sirens all over my village, which is only 29 kilometers, which is like 20 miles from Gaza. There was a lot of shrapnels and damage in the area. So I felt it will be wiser if my wife and kids will be a little further away. And very lucky, they only had 1 rocket siren there, but after 5 days my wife couldn't stand it anymore and she took them home. We do have a bomb shelter in the house. The babies are in the bomb shelter. That's where they sleep, so if you gotta run, then it's easier. The older ones knows exactly what to do because that's Israeli reality. But my own family, thank God, is perfectly okay. If we are perfectly okay as it comes to a little bit of traumas, well, time will tell. But physically everybody is okay. And also physically my friends are okay, which is something that I cannot say about all the members of my little community. So there you have their faces. And I dedicate this lecture tour in America, a lecture tour that spreads truth the best I can, to Sharon Gorodani, who we actually rent the house from his parents. He was murdered by Hamas because of his terrible crime of being a Jew, and he went to a music festival, like a lot of 25-year-olds do. Beautiful Kim was, this picture does not do grace of how pretty she was. She was 22. And she was murdered by Hamas a few hundred yards from where he was killed. Okay, and they grew up very close to each other. And her parents actually, her father is Yemenite, her mother is Irish. And maybe this is why she and her sisters were so unique, so healthy and pretty and full of life. I mean, how can you even harm such a thing? Well, apparently you can, because when they threw those hand grenades, they knew that she's inside that little bomb shelter, probably scared. We also lost Ben Shelley, a neighbor of mine, who was 26 years old. He used to be like a Greek god, you know, walking with his 6-pack. And he was a major in the special forces, a true hero, way before he was killed. And he was killed as he lived, risking his life, giving his life to save other people. So this is for their memory. Also on the table, in case I'll forget, please, you can pack my, or schlep my business card. Okay, most of you I think are friends of mine on Facebook, but this one has actually some new details because I'm now, you're looking at the president of a new organization. I'm the president of myself right now, but it is growing. There are volunteers already. Those are for purchase if you want. During COVID, that just like now destroyed the tourist industry, my uncle Nir made this. It contains hundreds of hours of lessons, studying, and videos of biblical studies in the Holy Land. If you want, it is $100 each, and it will provide you probably 100 hours of learning right over there. So that little card actually has a USB in it, which is pretty cool. And I believe many of you saw my book about the 6-Day War. There is another book. I create babies and books. That's what I do. So this is a children's book about Jerusalem. And yeah, and I'm going to, this one specifically I ran out, and since Kelsey is taking it to her new baby, then yeah, if you want one, well, you gotta make another baby. Okay? Don't look at me like that. So you can find them on Amazon alongside with my book about Iran that I don't introduce because there's so many developments. Now for the next 40 minutes, give or take, I'm going to run over the slideshow. There you have it, the Gaza war. First of all, and very important to mention, this is an ongoing battle. It is the first time for me that I'm talking about an historical event that I took part of, not something that happened 50 years ago, 100 years ago, or go all the way back to the biblical and Bronze Age times. I am not even sure if this is the right name for the war, because we didn't really give it a name yet. It is still going. Just a little bit a reminder, you have the Arab world, and then you have Israel. The Arab world is 1.5 times bigger than the United States of America, including Alaska. And Israel is at the size of New Jersey. Okay? Just to remember, oh, and they won that piece of land too. Gaza is a little province or a little strip of land on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. You guys remember that you drove me nuts because you kept saying, oh, it's the ocean, and I kept correcting you, it's the Mediterranean. Okay, so the Mediterranean Sea is the only friendly border Israel has with neighbors like Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. And then we share a border with Gaza. 2005 was the year that Israel pulled out. Look at all the urban centers. Most of it is actually one big city. Israel let the Palestinians run Gaza for themselves in 2005. They claim that there is an occupation. But in 2005, we pulled out. I took part of this army operation of evacuating Jews from their homes to allow the Palestinian self-government. And surprise, surprise, Gaza City was actually a developed city. They usually show you pictures on CNN of the poor neighborhoods of Gaza. Every city has some. Detroit has many. I've just been there. Most of Gaza actually is not that bad. Okay, with running water, with a lot of infrastructure. Do you know that over the years, the United Nations, or as we call it in Israel, the United Nothing, invested more money in Gaza alone and the Palestinian cause, or whatever you want to call them, more money than America put on the Marshall Plan to renovate the ruins of Europe after World War II? Boy, they had a lot of infrastructure above the ground and below the ground too. We're going to talk about that. $2.5 billion went to Hamas that we know of every year. Hamas is the terror organization that took over Gaza by large exception of the population. How do I know that? A, because they elected them in 2006. B, because they never rebelled against them. C, because underneath every second building there you're going to find a terror tunnel or a shaft. In Gaza, they indoctrinate the kids to be even more radical than they were to begin with. And then it continues to their version of Boy Scouts. And then it goes under the ground. So far, Israel found more than 1,000 miles of tunnels. Those tunnels have electricity, armed concrete. They've got blast doors, cameras, ventilation systems, rooms, some of them quite big, to contain terrorists for days with food, with running water, with pumps to clear the water of the underground because some of them were so deep, and so on and so forth. How many hundreds of millions of dollars they put on those? And ask yourself another question: who gave them some of that money? I wonder. And of course, they keep showing you that most of the Gazans live lives of poverty, but it is not true. Actually, in Gaza, well, there are poor people, and a lot, but people kept feeding them from all over the world. Maybe they ate so well, and that's why their population, they cry now that they are under a genocide. Okay? Show me another genocide in history. Listen to the numbers. 1948, there were 80,000 people in the Gaza Strip, and today, 2.3 million. Half of them below the age of 19 or 20. There you have it. Okay? My people suffered a genocide. My own grandmother lost 5 siblings in the Holocaust. If we suffered the Holocaust like the Palestinians claim, then maybe there would be, 100 million Jews out there. Okay? I think the most powerful weapon of Hamas, I'm getting to learn that, is actually the propaganda war. But of course they are very powerful with weapons, and some of their leaders, by the way, have billions of dollars in their many bank accounts. More than Taylor Swift and Oprah Winfrey in this case, okay? And this is not an updated one. It is actually not true. Now they have about 5 billion each. And where do those guys live? In Qatar. What do you think, they live in Gaza? No. Okay? The big game, if you zoom out, you need to remember that there is Iran. Iran is the one that sends tentacles of poisonous people, of radicalists that are nothing but phones to them. Okay? The Iranian tentacles, as I call them, militias, that's how they play their game. The Iranians always use the Arabs around as paper cup. You do one sip and throw it away. They're nothing to them. One of those paper cups killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan early today. Do you know that? Okay? And they are all over. Now they have 2 very powerful militias that are directly involved in the war against Israel, Hamas and smaller ones in Gaza. And then you have Hezbollah. You know what Hezbollah means? Party of God, no less. And they are in Lebanon. Look at them saluting here. Does that look familiar? That's the proxies of Iran. Those are the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They're shooting over global ships now, trying to cross the Red Sea. The Red Sea goes to the Suez Canal. Altogether, 13% of global shipping is under attack. The excuse, as usual, is the Jewish state that defends itself. Okay? Look at them marching on the American flag. Aren't they cute? Okay? Now the American fleet, under a lot of restraining from Washington, is allowed to do mild reactions, okay? Very, very mild responses. And in the meantime, just one second, not yet. In the meantime, while all this danger is slowly creeping around Israel, my friends, the Jews, my family, my countrymen, did what we do best. And what is that? Fight between ourselves. We had, throughout 2023, huge protests because of a very, very radical government that we have now, the most radical in the history of Israel. It is political, so I don't want to touch it too much, but it is all around the survival of this man, Benjamin Netanyahu, who alleged himself with the most radical Orthodox and settlers you can think of, created antagonism throughout the people, huge demonstrations. By the way, when we demonstrate in Israel, you can have 500,000 people in the street, not a single car will be burned, not a single window will be smashed, but it looks like the society, like the fabric of the society begins to disintegrate. And then the army started sending, this is the head of the Mossad, this is the head of the Shin Bet, the two Israeli secret organizations. This is the head of the Israeli intelligence corps. And they started sending warnings to Netanyahu, the prime minister, that the Arabs are smelling weakness. And they identified that our enemies but begin to believe that they can finally kill us all. Because that's what they want. Let's get down to the bottom line here. Okay, now in Jordan, by the way, they have a new restaurant called October 7. In Jordan, that's a state that we're supposed to have peace with. So they took down the sign after some time, but I think the message was delivered, okay? All those tactical warnings that were seen by some of these girls that are serving around Gaza, monitoring television screens because of the cameras they had there, they saw that the enemy is preparing something, started sending messages back. Hey, they're cooking something. And many of the army officers just ignored them. Indeed, when an female intelligence officer found and made a new document saying, here is what I believe the Hamas plan is, they ignored her. And I was in Hawaii. I visited Pearl Harbor 3 weeks ago. It shivered me how similar that is. There were symbols, the signs that the Japanese fleet is preparing to strike. An intelligence officer warned his commander, they are going to hit us here in Pearl Harbor. Nobody believed him, till it was too late. Kind of like the history destined to repeat itself. Don't forget, 50 years ago, the Arab armies got us on a complete surprise in the Yom Kippur War. And they chose exactly 50 years later, again in a holiday, because they don't give anything about holy Jewish days, quite the opposite, and they struck. And they did also an amazing job hiding their intentions. Here's the result from the air. You can see all the marks of the fire. You see those dots? Those are places where skirmishes happened. And they had us, guys. First of all, they fired more than 3,000 rockets in less than 4 hours. They basically flooded. Almost a third of Israel came under attack. Israel is a tiny state, remember? Those things can fly far. And although we have Iron Dome system, when you flood a sector, a few will come through. So people ran into the bomb shelters. There were explosions everywhere, huge confusion. And underneath that barrage of rockets, they started taking down all at once the cameras. They used drones, dropped the drones on every watchtower with bomblets. They even neutralized a few tanks with drones. A drone you guys can, get for $1,000 in eBay. That's the bigger one. And then 2 waves of 1,500 well-equipped terrorists attacked. Now, how could they hide it? Well, they played their cards very well. They knew that the Israelis are listening to every cell phone and to every computer and to every email. So what do? You just don't use them. Just use a paper. And they made sure that every terror unit will have no idea about the bigger plan. But they knew exactly where they are going. They had tablets attached to their legs. We found lots of them. They knew the coordinates of where to hit. And you know what else? The Israelis, we are naive. We're in a way like you guys. We believe that if the other side have a job, have something to do, then the other side might think like us. Hey, I can have better life. So we allowed tens of thousands of workers from Gaza to work in our communities around Gaza and inner Israel. Well, guess what? Those guys provided the location of everything you can imagine, where the generator is, where the armory, where the kibbutz is holding its guns is. because they usually concentrate them in one place. So first responders run to arm themselves. But we always prepared for an attack of a squad, maybe 12, but not of hundreds. Okay, and then when they attacked, they basically overwhelmed the Israeli defenses. And despite all the previous warnings, they got us completely unprepared. 780 soldiers were guarding 48 kilometers of the Gaza border. 780 soldiers, not all of them are even in their combat positions. Many of them are not even fighters. You know, I don't know, this one is a cook, this one communication, this one is, I don't know, a doctor. They got overran. Soldiers were slaughtered in their beds, my friends. In the worst tactical, some would say strategic failure of the Israeli army that I am part of. And this is what the enemy used. Tons of rockets, dozens of those motorized parachutes, okay, because then they could fly. They landed right where they wanted, usually straight into command centers. Toyota pickup trucks with heavy machine guns on them. That's like ISIS style. You're very, very mobile. Hundreds of motorcycles, each had 2 terrorists on it, so in minutes you can close the gap between the fence that they blew up and the Israeli community. And a lot of drones and a lot of rockets. And I didn't put the picture here, but also divers. They came out from the sea as well, the Mediterranean. Even wet subs. Yeah, they slaughtered 32 fishermen and people camping on the beach near Gaza. No one even thought that something like that can happen. And here's the result. What you see here is the destruction inside army bases, Israeli tanks. Look at it, the tank is intact. They didn't even have time to go inside. Luckily, those guys don't know how to activate them. Okay, but they can activate Humvees. So a few Humvees were taken into Gaza. And I trust you that the other side will use those few pictures of victory for the decades to come. Okay? In one case, 41 soldiers were slaughtered in their compartments, basically, without even putting their guns on. They got us on that surprise. By the way, a day before that it was just published, Israel pulled out 2 companies, almost 100 men of elite soldiers from the Gaza area to the West Bank. Can you imagine the frustration those people will feel forever? Yeah, terrible. The most terrible thing, I think the biggest tragedy was when the Hamas took out the command center where those girls were sitting, the girls that warned. Field observance. Those girls the lucky ones were shot and killed in their positions. Others who were not killed immediately were tortured to death. They removed their breasts with knives. Okay, they shot them in their private organs. The amount of hate toward women is unbelievable. In Islam, especially Hamas radical Islam, a woman is less than a goat. And they cannot stand the thought that there is a woman in uniform, right, independent. Some girls were raped, and some, those are the most misfortunate ones, were kidnapped into Gaza. And I don't even want to think what those girls are going through, if they're not lucky enough to be dead already. We'll have to move on. When they entered the communities, they burned families alive. Now you see, they had us. Under the rocket fire, everyone heard the silence. So everyone runs into the bomb shelters. And that's exactly where they wanted us. So they started blowing up the doors of bomb shelters because they had Russian-made magnetic mines that can take out that door like nothing. Some were shot through the door and then they kicked the doors in to find whole families there. Yes, some Jews resisted, okay? We have pistols, we have some rifles, and they killed hundreds of terrorists throughout the day, but there were 3,000 of them. I'm going to be a bit graphic, because if you don't understand what Hamas did, you don't understand this war, okay? Dante's hell cannot describe the stuff I've seen And you know what really haunts me? The smell. And I'm not a big fighter. I was there days and days later. There was still smell of death in the air. It's not a stench. It's something you feel. And the only person I ever heard talking about that was my grandmother, who survived the Holocaust. And what really killed me was sights like that. You see the children's books? Over here in the blood, they beheaded babies, live babies, which means you need to bend down and you need to cut the baby's head. And they made sure the parents will see it. How do I know that? Because they filmed it and uploaded it proudly. There is a whole war pornography going on now. Okay? I've seen how they got into a house, they brutally murdered a family, but the woman, they bent her over, and after they gang raped her, they took 9-inch nails and with a hammer nailed them into her private organs. And she was still alive. Can you imagine how she died? You could still see the scratches of her desperate attempt to try to escape and to resist. They opened the belly of a pregnant woman. You heard about that? What they did? And she was still alive. I know it because I saw it. She had a duct tape on her mouth so she could not scream, so they can work. And they took the baby out in front of her eyes, stabbed the baby, and then finally put her out of her misery by shooting her in the head. That's what we're dealing with. The Nazis didn't do stuff like that. Not even the Nazis. And the Nazis, after they murdered Jews throughout the day, they usually went back to base and got drunk completely, trying to forget what they did. Those guys, they called their mothers. In Gaza, we have recording of that. Mother, I have blood of Jews in my hands. And she's blessing him. Bless you, God, bless you. The worst happened actually in the music festival, where my two neighbors and 365 other kids were brutally murdered. Okay, there are videos of them. They have a special hate for the girls. They found girls dead. They gang raped them, and they broke their legs open so they cannot close their legs. They tied them to trees and gang raped them. They removed their breasts with knives. Sometimes boys or soldiers they killed, by the way, they removed their private organ and put it in their own mouth as an act of humiliation. It's something that the Arabs, by the way, did once in 1948. That was the last time an Arab force managed to capture a Jewish settlement. There were no survivors. None. Those who stayed alive were kidnapped to Gaza. Some of them were released, and the unlucky ones are still there. Very few girls, by the way, are still alive and could tell what they've been through. Girls got pregnant, by the way, by the mass gang raping. What do you do with that? Then came the civilians. I love when the CNN called them civilians. Okay? The innocent Gazans, thousands of them, ran joyfully into the destroyed army bases and into the kibbutz communities, kidnapping, raping, burning. I've seen much of that, and then carried a lot of it into Gaza. October 7 was the happiest day in the history of, you want to call them Palestinians? Fine, Palestinians. Happiest day ever. There were so many victims, it took us weeks to understand how many we lost. Okay, about the heroic stories and brave stories we can go forever, but I have so much time today, but we can talk about that, and I'm going to write a book about the bravery of the women. I'm going to call it Sheroes, about the Israeli women in the October 7 war, because they suffered the most, but they were also the bravest. Okay, and now, by the way, we have girls in every combat unit. What, you think Gal Gadot got the job for nothing? Have you ever seen an Israeli girl with an M16? Don't mess with them. I'm married to one, trust me. But here's what happened, okay? 778 civilians, 301 soldiers, 55 police officers, 10 secret agents were killed too, and 248 were kidnapped. Okay, those are the casualties just by those the enemy killed on that day, equal, if you do the proportion of the population, there's much less Jews in the state of Israel than the people in Michigan. Even if you add the large Arab population, the entire population of Israel is 10 million. Okay, here in Michigan you have 10.7. I know because I had to meet the state rep, so I prepared. How did I prepare? Wikipedia. Of course. So guys, if you do the calculation, it is what America lost in the Vietnam War, but in one day. And the Vietnam War was more than a decade. No such a thing, there is no such a thing as an Israeli family who didn't lose somebody. Or didn't know of somebody who was killed. Or worse, kidnapped. Tell Biden I'm going to call him later. And Biden came. No one can take that away from him. He came, it was his 11th visit in Israel. Many in Israel, by the way, are calling him the last democratic Zionist president. Biden is an old breed. He was born somewhere in the first temple period. And you got that? And he saw it all. This guy grew up and became a senator during the Cold War. And he was always supportive of Israel. He even came during the Yom Kippur War. And he came and he reached a warm hand to help my people. And we will not forget that. And then came the American army. What's with the square jaws of American soldiers? No one's watching that. The American army so far landed in Israel more than 300 cargo jets with a lot of equipment and weapons we need. And there is also naval support, not directly, but your presence there is crucial. And we will never forget that. And I think God will not forget that too. Okay, but the warm hand that Biden reached, it is if an invisible force his hand behind his back, and we can feel how it is cooling down as some forces are entering the picture. You call it politics, right? But that's what it is. We'll have to continue now. You can't continue without the cowboys. Where are they? Cowboys. Those are the cargo jets. Oh, Bibi and his nemesis, Benny Gantz, created a joint coalition now. Look how much they love each other over there. So the politicians pretend that they are united now. They're not. This war is conducted despite the politicians, not thanks to the politicians, but despite the politicians. They don't deserve the people of Israel. They don't. Okay, both of them, all of them. And they don't deserve also those guys. You see those kids? Cowboys from Oklahoma. They're not Jews. Showed up. And they started working in the farms. That's what they know. Because us farmers, I lost my entire olive crop of the year because I was in the army. The olive on the ground. Remember my olive oil? Yeah. Well, there will be no Naomi olive oil this year. Okay? It's all on the ground now. Nobody was there to pick it up. But a lot of help did came, and a lot of volunteers started picking fruit in Israel, and actually you can hear a lot of English in my village. That's for sure. Because everyone is in the army. It could be your sister, that's Noah, my sister. Here is Michal, my cousin. Her brother, Omer, my Abba. Hi, Abba. My dad was a fighter in every war since 1970. Everyone tried to kill him, the Egyptians, the Syrians, the Palestinians, my mom, everyone. He is still there. Unbelievable. My brother Oded, thank God, is out of Gaza just this week. Previous week he came out of Gaza. Danny is a very good friend of mine, and he's going to work with me. He's a Spanish speaker. So he's going to work for my organization with the Latino communities. Here's me. Green brings out my eyes, by the way. But I was never a good fan of the army. I must tell you that. I did not enjoy myself. Here's my father-in-law who showed up, age 72. I think they made him from parts of dead soldiers, this guy. And he demanded to join a combat unit. So he ended up joining a light infantry battalion in South Ashkelon as a jeep driver, and he was not alone. There were hundreds who did it. Okay, volunteers. And Ari and Elliot Fine, two brothers from California that are very good friends. They're like family to me. Ari was in our house hundreds of times. Elliot was in our house. He literally lived in my parents' house when he served in the Israeli army. Volunteers, guys. There's no mandatory service for American Jews. And they left their house in California and came to Israel 10 years ago, and they did it again now. Both of them are married with kids. They left everything and came to Israel to risk their lives. Okay, there is more than 1,000 of them fighting for the state of Israel right now. Yeah, a lot of equipment came from overseas. Those two guys managed to repair 100 old tanks. They should write a book about it. The Phoenix Battalion. Okay, they came, they said, well, we were tankers for years. We know how to do stuff. And the officers told them, we don't have any tanks. Well, they went to the scrapyard, and I think they got 100 tanks fixed with plastic bandage and Diet Sprite. I don't know how they did it, but 100 tanks are now in combat operations because of those guys and hundreds of volunteers. It's experience, more important, even if you're an old, chubby veteran. Experience matters the most, and they know every inch in the tanks. But then, guys, we started hearing about that. As the war slowly extends and get bigger, it's not only a war in Gaza. We have 100,000 Israeli soldiers pinned down to the Lebanese border fighting with Hezbollah. It is local battles. It's not an all-out war. But you remember the beautiful Galilee with its mountains and trees? Well, there are explosions there daily. I almost got blown up. The only time something really blew up next to me was when I took a few Americans a month and a half ago and we went to visit soldiers in the Lebanese border. And then two rockets blew up about half a mile from where we are. I thought it's the coolest thing ever. They didn't like it that much. No, but they were cool. They were cool. One of them was from Washington, D.C. He said, oh, explosions. It's like home. Those are American bases under attack. Those are ships, commercial ships, getting hijacked by the Houthi rebels of Yemen. Who do you think backed them up? Of course. Look at those guys. I'm not sure they are even Arabs, but they have the Palestinian kafia, and you can see how they desecrate the Hanukkah next to an elite American university with the Palestinian flag. Do you know when the Palestinian flag was created? 1964. What an ancient civilization. Okay, the very name Palestine, by the way, comes from a Hebrew word of invaders. Do you know that? I wrote an article about it. It's on my website. And this is my favorite. Queers for Palestine. It's like chickens for KFC. Okay? I mean, dorks, do you know what they do to you if you are homosexual in Gaza? They'll throw you off the roof, and not from too tall one, to make sure you will die slowly. There are no human rights there, but it's like an instinct to support the underdog. They don't stop for a second to check historical facts. They've never been to Israel to think they know when they chant from the river to the sea. What river, you ask them? What sea? The Black Sea? Look at the videos the Israelis are posting. Dorks. And they support the people that call us the little Satan and call you the big Satan. Stop for a second and check. But that's not how it works. Here's a map of the first ground assault over Gaza. We came hard on Gaza using everything we've got, but in a slow process. If Israel wanted, Gaza would be wiped out of the face of the earth in about a day. But we are not doing it because of two reasons. One, so many people are kidnapped. And two, we're not the other side. We're Jews. We don't fight like our enemies do. Quite the opposite. It didn't stop the world from judging us now in the International Court of Injustice in Hague, in Holland, right? They put the Jews on a trial in the International Holocaust Day, by the way. And slowly and steadily we captured Gaza. You can see weapons they found on hospitals. Underneath every hospital, Gaza alone has 36 hospitals. They have more healthcare than we all can dream of, because of the United Nothing feeding them. Okay, Google what is UNRWA. You know, there is like Disney and Disney Plus. So there is United Nations Agency for Refugees, but there is United Refugees for the Palestinians, who can inherit the Palestinian certificate forever and ever. Gaza suffered horribly, I must say. Gaza looks like a bombed out city from World War II after all the heavy combat. And we lost hundreds of soldiers in the slow, painful process of clearing the city. We managed to get some of the hostages. We all remember there was a ceasefire until Hamas violated it, but thank God almost all the kids and most of the women came back to Israel. But it came with a price. We had to agree of releasing terrorists. You see this thing here? Her face was desecrated because her own bomb misfired or something and her car burst in flames. After she was in jail, she sued Israel for not allowing her, not paying for plastic surgeries for her. Okay? She was released to Jerusalem, close to the people she tried to kill. But it's a price Israel is willing to pay to save life, to save innocent life, innocent people that are kidnapped in Gaza. Since then, the war continues. It is actually more bluish colors now because Israel controls about 60% of Gaza. Again, we found so many tunnels, it takes forever to blow them up. You gotta secure the soldiers fighting there. You don't know if there are hostages down there. You don't. What if there is a booby trap? You know how many soldiers were killed because of booby traps? I'll tell you, close to 100. Just because of that. Because they're working slowly. Any other army on the planet, by the way, will probably turn Gaza into a golf course by now. Okay? And it's not that Israel don't have the ability. Hamas took off the uniform. They are only fighting as civilians. They are only moving when there are women and children around them. They send elderly and women as scouts, as suicide bombers. They play nasty against the only army on earth, no offense, including yours, that plays by all the possible rules of engagements. Okay? We keep losing soldiers. Oh, by the way, a lot of those geniuses in Berkeley and whatever, they blame the Jews for being some kind of a white oppressors. They don't know that half of the Jews came from the Middle East because we were there before Islam was born. And some of us are black. They don't know that. And she lost her life in Jenin because there are skirmishes in the West Bank. The Israeli army is stretched thin right now. But thank God, we have so many volunteers, so everyone takes part of it. And the war keeps going and going in the Red Sea, in Gaza, in Lebanon, and in your streets. And I had to see it because this picture over there, Islam will dominate the world. Liberty can go to hell. That's what they say. Can you guess where that picture was taken? Michigan. So I drove to Dearborn to see it. Yeah, highly suggest if you need a new hijab. Okay? But also look at the bigger picture. Because there is a lot there. It's not only the propaganda war, and guys, they are in your streets. But it's more than that. Above Hamas, you have Iran. And behind Iran, you have Russia, Who do you think made most of the weapons that killed my people? The Russians. And who do you think, by the way, enjoys the war now? Russia. Who cares about Ukraine? The Jews are defending themselves. We got to stop the terrible Jews for defending themselves. So now people don't pay attention to Ukraine. They killed hundreds of Ukrainians with illegal attacks on civilians now, and nobody cares. And behind them, smiling, is the Chinese dragon. And China deleted Israel from its maps. Recently they picked sides, and their hideous propaganda machine called TikTok, that is a major source of information for young Americans and others. They don't check what they see. They don't match the sources. Okay? I mean, even CNN, for heaven's sake, is better than TikTok. Yeah, but that's true. Who is in charge of the algorithm of TikTok? China. And the Israeli non-profits who are trying to fight, to push back against anti-Semitism in TikTok, find that their accounts are getting shut down all the time. Same thing, to a certain extent, happened oh, that's a terrible picture. Do you know why the baby is smiling? Because she sees her father, who was killed in the war. This is a picture that haunts me, actually. Do you see? Everybody is crying, her mother, her young cousin, but she's smiling. She don't know that she's going to grow up without her father, David. But either way, this is why a lot of people like me are trying to push back. Okay, when I heard what's going on, I'm a man of words. I'm a storyteller, you know me. That's what I do. So I decided that I will not sit down in my house like a lot of tour guides and wait for army service. I was in the army for 3 months, not a big fan. And I decided to build up a new non-profit. We are now called We Walk Together, because that's what we are. We walk together. But you know that when in the 60s and 70s, when the African American community, you had the marches walking together to freedom. That's where the name is from. Because we identify that there is absolutely ignorance in Israel toward the gigantic African American community, and they don't understand how important they are. 13% of the population. Did you know that? It's like 3 or 4 times bigger than the population of Israel. And then we also going to talk with the Latinos, with the Jews, with the Christians, and then when we'll beef up, when we're ready, then we go on the colleges. Good luck with that. Okay? But we will. I started meeting with politicians now in Michigan. We're going to bring the first mission of politicians from Texas to see Israel, people who never visited Israel before. And this is part of the crew. The crew got bigger since. That's me. That's Pastor Aaron Cordell, my friend from Detroit. This godly man, his name is David Turner. How many David do you know, by the way? How many Moses and Abrahams and all that? And people don't understand the connection between the two countries. But I'm preaching to the choir here. This is my uncle. Not really my uncle, but I adopted him. Uncle Nir, who's now in San Diego doing an amazing job. Gal is in charge of our social media. This is Ian, who works for the government here. Do you know that your capital is Lansing? It's a city that before I've been there and never... Yeah, it's a great city. Great city. Great. Carl Moore is the spirit behind it all. He was a very important person in the EPA under Trump. And this successful lawyer who's super Zionist and worked in the past in Israel, evangelical Christian, actually helped me starting this. And because I have a face for radio, we are going to use Einav here to be our presenter. And she is a great, internet influencer and all that. Google her, Einav Avizemer. She bites. Okay, she will eat them alive. Smart and sharp. Let's keep going. I believe we're almost done. Oh, no, wait. That's me. Yeah. This lady over here, her name is Gina Johnson. She is a state representative here in Michigan. That's just the beginning. She was actually very impressed. I was very impressed by her. She spent time in Israel before. She knew everything, actually. And I believe that thanks to her, I'm going to meet with a whole bunch of Michiganer politicians soon. So it is just the beginning. So this is us. We walk together. At this point, I know you have an important game. Okay? But if you want to ask questions about a war that I hope one day the Americans will understand sooner is better than later, how relevant this war is to you. If you'll ask an average Israeli, what do you think America should learn from this war? Everyone will say the same thing. You are next. Okay? It is part of a much, much bigger game. So, Pete, we can have some time for questions and answers?
Yeah. Hang on. Let me bring your mic so everybody can hear your question. Oh, Mike.
What about all the Jews in New York and Los Angeles that live around the country? What do they? I never hear anything about them. I never hear anything about the Jews in the media, how they're fighting back, how they feel. We never hear any of this. And I know that living in Los Angeles, there's a lot of Jewish family there living on the East Coast. What's happening with that?
Okay, that's a great question. Many of the Jews, especially in New York City, are traditionally very liberal. 70% voted for the Democrats in the last elections alone. Now, I think you're going to see October 7th changed a lot. I know hundreds of American Jews. I think people are rallying back to their flags, to their traditions, and I think it was a wake-up call, a horrible wake-up call for my people. A lot of Jews will start pushing back. In fact, I don't want to tell her name because she was threatened by her Muslim and Christian neighbors in Cleveland, a sweet 16-year-old girl, but she's going to write an article for me about what she's going through. A Jewish girl, yeah. There is a lot of help, but it takes time. It takes time. Listen, the Jews are afraid also. Ask me about Europe. What's going on with the Jews in Europe? Europe is... Have you been to Europe in the last couple of years? Like in Londostan and all that? I've been to Paristan. I've seen it. I've been to Hollandstan in the summer too. It's scary. I was scared if I was them. But I think people are waking up and people are pushing back. Use the algorithms that changed our media. I mean, and just follow us and it will connect you to a lot of more people. But here's a question to you. Does anybody here knows the name of the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs? Like, ask me what Israel is doing about it. Who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs? That's the guy who's in charge of all that, right? He's supposed to push back against anti-Semitism and all that. Well, you don't know. I don't think he knows. Okay? We are living the PR war almost completely because the politicians are... Sorry, I'm going to throw up. But that's what they are, and this is why people like me feel that we need to do it ourselves because nobody else will do it. Yeah, more questions?
How about Yossi? How about Yossi, our bus driver? You didn't say anything about him.
Yossi is perfectly okay. I called him during the war. His town came under a lot of rocket attacks, but thank God a small police force stopped the terrorists that were on their way to Netivot, to his town. So there was a shootout, a few police officers gave their lives, but thank God the attack on his town was stopped. So Yossi, his wife and his daughter and his older kids are fine. They're fine.
So how can we be praying for you specifically?
You can, Carl the Great I call him. Where is he? Carl here always say he's a devoted Christian. He is, by the way, he's the only white guy in a big African American church in DC. That's what God planned for him. Carl always say, pray and pass the ammo. And the ammo I need supporters. I need people to follow. We walk together. Okay, my agent Pete is right here. He already gave all of your emails. There are no escapes. And follow us. Yes, we need donations because my budget is $5.80. I borrowed money from my uncle to get down here. Remember, I'm broke. There is no work now in Israel. For tourists, for tourism. So any assistance with We Walk Together is more than welcome. Okay, we'll send you the links. We'll send you the data.
What is your goal? We Walk Together, the goal of your organization.
The goal is to spread truth, to push back against anti-Israeli hatred, to tell the Americans and the Israelis that we walk together here. And we're going to do it by coming here and do lectures, and we're going to do it by bringing important decision makers, internet influencers, singers, whatever. I'll bring Taylor Swift if I can. Okay, down to Israel. I don't think I can afford her, but yeah, Hamas can, I think. So we'll bring as many people back to Israel for teaching, basically. It's going to be a long journey. There is also a way to do it. My dream is that the fundraising will be successful enough to bring my whole family to America so I can do this full-time job and not just schlep, because it's exhausting. You noticed that probably. And then we will probably live in Washington, D.C. area and work with African Americans a lot.
Are you working with the WJC?
No, I'm completely independent right now. I work for my wife, usually. Yeah. Amen.
Okay, thanks everybody.